You're in the middle of your own problem when your phone rings. It's your mom, or your sibling, or someone from the family with a situation that needs handling. And without really deciding to, you set your problem down carefully, like you're going to come back to it later, and you pick up theirs. You handle it. You calm someone down. You make the calls or have the conversation or carry the thing that needed carrying. And then afterwards, maybe hours later, you remember that thing you set down. And you realize you've been doing this your whole life. Not because someone sat you down and said this is your job. Nobody ever said it out loud. But somewhere between being the first child and being a daughter, a set of rules got written that you absorbed so completely you thought they were just your personality. You thought you were just someone who takes care of things, someone who handles it, someone who doesn't really need that much. Here's what nobody told you. That wasn't your personality, that was your position. Think about how you grew up. You were the first, which meant there was a period, however brief, when all of your parents' attention, anxiety, and expectation was concentrated entirely on you. Everything you did was documented, every milestone noted. You were the experiment and the proof of concept at the same time. And then a sibling arrived, and without anyone explaining the shift, you felt it. The attention moved. And you were old enough to understand what had happened, but not old enough to know what to do with it. So you did the thing that children do when they need to stay significant. You made yourself useful. You became the helper, the translator between parents and younger siblings, the one who knew where things were and how things worked and what mood the house was in. You got good at reading the room because you had to, and you got good at managing it because it turned out you could. And here is where the gender layer comes in, because this is where the eldest son and the eldest daughter experience diverge in ways that research consistently tracks. Eldest sons are often handed authority. Eldest daughters are more often handed responsibility. The difference matters. Authority comes with recognition. Responsibility often comes with invisibility. You did the work and the work got absorbed into the background of the family, the way furniture does. Present and necessary and never particularly noticed. Psychologists studying birth order and gender have found that eldest daughters are significantly more likely than their male counterparts to take on emotional caretaking roles within families, more likely to carry the mental load of family logistics, and more likely to describe themselves in adulthood as someone who simply cannot stop helping. Not because they don't want to, but because stopping feels like a form of disappearance. Psychologists use a concept called the parentification burden to describe what happens when children take on adult-level emotional or practical roles within a family. But for eldest daughters, researchers have identified something even more specific, a pattern that goes beyond parentification into what some call the family CEO role. Not a title anyone gives them, a function they grow into. The family CEO knows everyone's schedules, everyone's sensitivities, everyone's unspoken needs. She is the one who remembers the appointment, notices the tension before it becomes a fight, smooths things over before anyone realizes they needed smoothing. She does this not because she was asked, but because somewhere along the way she learned that her value in the system is tied to her function within it. And here is what makes this psychologically distinct, because this isn't just about being helpful or responsible, it's about identity. Developmental psychologists describe a process called role consolidation, the way a child internalizes a social role so completely that it stops feeling like a role and starts feeling like a self. The eldest daughter doesn't think I am playing the caretaker. She thinks I am a caretaker. The role and the person become the same thing. And that fusion happens so early and so quietly that she spends most of her adult life not realizing there was ever a distinction to make. Researcher Karen Gail Lewis, who spent years studying sibling dynamics and gender, found that eldest daughters are among the most likely to report difficulty identifying their own needs, difficulty resting without guilt, and difficulty receiving care without feeling uncomfortable. Not because they are damaged, but because those capacities, knowing what you need, resting, receiving, require a self that is separate from the caretaking function. And the role consolidation happened before that separate self had a chance to develop. And that explains so much about who you became. Take the competence. Eldest daughters are often extraordinarily capable, not because they were born more capable than anyone else, but because they had to become capable early. Competence was the currency of significance in the family system, and so they got very good at it very young. By the time they reach adulthood, they often have a level of practical and emotional skill that genuinely impresses people. But here is the thing about competence when it's built that way. It comes with a price tag that nobody shows you at the time. The price is this: people stop offering to help because you seem fine, because you always handle it. Because you've been handling it so long and so smoothly that the idea of you needing something doesn't easily occur to the people around you. You became so good at the role that the role made you invisible. Then there's the anger, because this section would be dishonest without it. A lot of eldest daughters carry a quiet and persistent anger that they don't fully have language for. It's not dramatic, it doesn't tend to explode, it sits underneath things. In the resentment of being the one who remembered, in the exhaustion of always being the one who called first, in the specific and particular frustration of watching siblings move through life without the invisible tax that has been running in the background of yours since you were 7. This anger is not irrational. It is a completely legitimate response to an unequal load carried over a long time. The problem is that eldest daughters are often also the least permitted to express it, because expressing it means admitting the load exists, and admitting the load exists means someone might feel guilty, and making someone feel guilty is, in the family CEO framework, a form of failure. So the anger goes quiet, and quiet anger is one of the most exhausting things a person can carry. And there is the relationship with control that runs underneath all of it. When your sense of safety as a child was built around your ability to manage the environment, around staying ahead of what was coming, smoothing before it fractured, holding before it broke, you develop a relationship with control that doesn't switch off just because you're an adult now and the house is different. You plan further ahead than most people think is necessary. You find genuine difficulty in delegating. You feel a low-level anxiety in situations where you can't see what's coming. Not because you are a control freak, the way that phrase gets used dismissively, but because for a very long time, your control was what kept things intact. And that encoding doesn't erase itself just because the original situation has changed. Now here's the part that needs to be said clearly. Because understanding the origin of a pattern is not the same as being released from it. And there is a shadow side to this that is worth naming honestly. The same competence that makes eldest daughters so capable can tip into something harder. An inability to let things be imperfect. An exhausting standard applied to themselves first and quietly, sometimes unfairly, to the people around them. A tendency to overfunction in relationships in ways that ultimately prevent those relationships from becoming reciprocal. If you are always the one who handles it, you are also always the one who controls it. And the two things are not as separate as they feel. And the martyrdom, not everyone, but enough that it needs to be named. There is a version of the eldest daughter pattern that carries its own load so dramatically, so consistently, so visibly that the carrying itself becomes its own form of control. The suffering that communicates how much has been sacrificed. The help that cannot be declined. This version has learned to use the role to stay central, to stay needed, to stay safe. And that is worth examining honestly if it sounds familiar. But here is what gets missed in everything written about the eldest daughter. She is not defined by her suffering. She is defined by what she built inside of it. The capacity to hold a family together, to read the room, to carry the weight without making it everyone else's problem. These are not small skills. They are some of the most sophisticated emotional and relational skills a person can develop. And the eldest daughter has been developing them since she was old enough to notice that the room needed something. She is reliable in ways that people in her life have come to depend on so completely that they've stopped naming it. She is the first call, the steady presence, the one who shows up. What she often hasn't been told, what nobody thought to say, perhaps because everyone was too busy relying on her, is that she is allowed to put it down. Not permanently, not in a way that abandons the people she loves, but she is allowed to let someone else carry something, to not have the answer immediately, to be in a situation and not fix it, to need something and say so directly, without making it smaller first. The role was given to her before she could choose it, but what she does with it now, that part is hers. There is a particular kind of tired that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being the one who remembers, the one who tracks, the one who quietly does the emotional accounting for an entire family and then goes home and wonders why she can't relax. It is the tiredness of someone who has been responsible for longer than she should have been, for more people than was fair, in ways that were never fully acknowledged and sometimes not even seen. And if that's you, if you recognized yourself in here, in any of it, then there is something I want to say that perhaps no one in your family has thought to say clearly. Thank you. Not for the way you managed everything. Not for the competence or the reliability or the way you held things together when they were about to fall. Thank you for staying, for showing up, for caring repeatedly about people who sometimes couldn't see the cost of what they were asking. You didn't choose the role, but you showed up inside it with more grace than anyone had a right to expect. And you are allowed, finally, without guilt, without needing to make it smaller to let someone take care of you. If this found you, please subscribe.